If you have been a Power Surge user and you felt like that, well, you'd like to learn more about how Power Surge works, if you feel like your damage is a bit lacking, well, this is the right video for you, because in this one, we're going to dive into, well, a lot about, well, how Power Surge works, right? Its damage formulas, because the game, well, is actually lying to you, right? In the tooltip, it is wrong. And we'll also be diving about mods and stuff like that. So stay tuned and let's get right into the video. So let's start by looking at the game's tooltip about Power Surge. So if I come here, Power Surge, press X. So Power Surge is does afflict continuous debuff and is also an instant damage type. So every time you proc Power Surge, you're going to deal status damage equal to 50% of your PSI intensity once, and you'll inflict Power Surge status for 6 seconds. It is of L shock element type. The additional damage cannot crit, cannot strike weak spots, and nor will it decay with distance. And all that is true unless if stated otherwise, right? And then it also gives you the damage formula for it. So it is 50% of your PSI intensity times 1 plus Power Surge damage factor bonus times 1 plus Power Surge final damage bonus. Now this is wrong because it's missing so many other things, and there are some small damage calculations that they just straight up don't even include. So let's get right into some damage testing. So I'm gonna remove all my gear piece, my mods, everything, right? Alright, so now I have everything removed. I'm in a polluted area, so I literally have no HP. But let's get right into how Power Surge is calculated. So here, as you can see, I'm currently sitting at 138 PSI intensity. Oh, and by the way, PSI intensity is pretty much what's given from your armor, right? So for instance, my gas mask hood gives me PSI intensity, 29 PSI intensity. And the PSI intensity goes up as you calibrate your armor. So if I go into my gear workbench and I go into calibration armor, you will see that, for instance, this at calibration 1, it gives me 124 PSI intensity, and second out of 6, it's 133. So calibrate your armor when you're using Power Surge builds. Now, if you go back, it tells me that I have 138 PSI intensity. And, well, if I go into my battle stats by pressing C, I can see that I got 0% weapon damage bonus, I've got 0% status damage bonus. However, I do have 18.4% shock damage bonus, right? And that is from my calibration pretty much. So there's still one instance of damage. How much was that? That was 81, right? 81. So now let's open my calculator and calculate that. So I'm at 138 PSI intensity. The damage formula states it's divided by 2 because it's 50%, so we're going to do that. I'm at 69. However, I'm dealing 81 damage. So this is really easy. I just apply the 18.4% given from my gear, right? However, the game actually does not take into account the decimals. So it's just times 1.18, which shows me 81.42. Right, if I had taken into account the 0.4, I would go over 81.5, and the game would have rounded the number to 82. Right, so this is the first buff that you can actually get. Now, if you're good in Kratos, and I activate the automatic weapon enhancement Kratos, which gives me plus 20% damage, and I go into gear, I will notice I am not equipping the gun, but now I am. You will notice that I have 20% weapon damage bonus, and I also have 20% status damage bonus. Now, how much damage am I doing? 98, right? So 98 damage. It's this. Again, the damage bonuses in this game are multiplicative each other, and the only two that are multiplicative with each other is weak spot damage and crit damage. So yeah, that was on a side note. Let's get back on track. So I believe I was dealing 98. Yeah, 98. So we do this times the 1.2 that I just got from my status damage bonus, which I end now at, well, 98, right? So status damage bonus is taken into account. The shock damage bonus, which is like elemental damage, is taken into account. Now, what else is taken into account? So here I have Deviation Master, right? Having it fight alongside grants damage plus 50% against deviants. So I have the gel with me, so I put it out. what do I see in my stats? I'm gonna see damage bonus against deviants 50%. Now if I shoot against the dummy, I'm dealing 147 damage of shock, right? So it's this times 1.5, which ends me at 147. Right, so now we know that, well, the thing is, it works because the dummy is, first of all, you would have to know that the dummy is considered as a deviant, right? Sorry for not telling that earlier, but let's move on. And we made a credo. I can see I've got first round blast and I've got transient impact. Let's just take a look at transient impact first. So after triggering a power surge damage plus 25% for 3 seconds. So let's test that out, right? I triggered it once. The second time, well, after in the next 3 seconds, it's 122. So what happens here? So it's 69 times 1.188, and I believe I also have the 1.2. So I'm at 97. I'm supposed to reach 122. And how much of a buff does it give to me? I believe it's 25. Yeah, 25. So times again 1.25. That I do end up at 122. So now what if I activate first round blast? This gives me power surge damage bonus 25%. The other also gave me power surge damage 25%. So now is it 0.25 times 0.25 for the calculations? Let's see. Right? So here, if I just reload and I deal shock, I can see in my gear stats that I've got 45% of power surge damage bonus, right? And then I've also got 25% of unstable bomber damage bonus. Well, this is from the other. This is 45%, right? So here, if I just redo the calculation, we're going to do divided by 1.25 from earlier, and 45, right? 45% times 1.45. I end up at 141. And how much am I supposed to hit? Let's see. 142. Well, this is 141.67, so it rounds up to 142. So once again, these two buffs are actually not multiplicative. They are additive. So that was just a quick fun fact, right? So it's gonna scale off of your elemental damage here, of your status damage bonus, of your damage against X type of enemies, because as we've seen, the dummy is a deviant. And the damage percent bonus against deviant also was calculated into, well, the damage calculation, which means that all the other damage against X type of bonus are gonna be calculated if you fight against that type of enemy, right? And then at last we've got the random power surge damage bonus from other sources, right? Now there is a special case for this. So here, let's take a look at the special case with my shotgun, right? So my shotty has a power surge damage factor plus 15%. So let's see. How much damage are you dealing? 79, right? And the damage, starting damage is 69 because it's through my PSI times 1.15. So it's actually 79. However, the fun fact that that is not there is that, right, when you go look into your battle stats, it's not written anywhere. It's not written anywhere. It's literally only existing in your shotgun stats. So be aware of that sometimes in your buffs or whatever. If you want to know exactly, if you want to do some math, or like know exactly how good something is, and like sometimes you will notice that the buffs will not appear, and this goes the same for mods. Some mods, so for instance, say I put on, where is it? I believe it's first execution. It's gonna say power surge ultimate damage plus 30%. Now let's take a look at my gear stats. I'm just gonna equip this real quick. Alright, so I've got crit damage, refill damage, blah 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 blah. Now where is the 30% ultimate damage bonus for power surge? Nowhere. So keep that in mind, because it is still calculated into your power surge damage. So it's not because it doesn't appear in your battle stats that it means that it's like the mod isn't working. Yes, it is working, right? So let's test if the mod actually works, right? So I'm currently at 315 PSI intensity. I've got no other bonuses here. I'm gonna use the shoddy, right? So the shoddy gives me 15% power surge damage factor, and well, from the mask, the mask gives me no damage factor against the dummy type, right? And it gives me 30% power surge ultimate damage when enemies don't have power surge, and the shotgun actually doesn't give power surge status, right? So let's test that out. When I don't crit, it's 235. Let's see if that is accurate. So pull out the calculator. We're gonna do 315 divided by 2, and then times the 1.3 from the mask, from the mod, which gives me 204. And with the Shoddy's own power surge damage factor, we're gonna do that as well, 1.15, and I do indeed finish at a number equivalent to the amount of damage that I dealt. So yeah, the mods work, even though they don't, the stats don't appear in the list. So this is gonna pretty much wrap it up for the damage calculation, because, well, of course now, if you crit with the shotgun, right, because for the Corrosion Shoddy, power surge can actually crit. So you'd have to multiply your crit damage in order to calculate your power surge when it crits, right? But for now, just remember that power surge will scale off of pretty much a lot of things. It'll scale off sometimes from the power surge damage bonus written down here. It'll scale off of your status damage bonus. It'll scale off of your damage bonus against certain enemies type. It'll also scale off of your element damage bonus, right? So right here is shock damage bonus. And yeah. It also scale off of your guns damage bonus if it actually gives one, but that's pretty much it. So now, without that information, what can we do with it? We can essentially now theoretically determine which mod is better than the other, right? So say here we're going to ignore all other mods and assume that our shock damage is by default 1, right? So here we want to determine which mod would be better for my shock damage, assuming that I'm shooting at a great ones, which is a boss, right? So here I've got status enhancement, core effect 20% status damage, 3.2% element, and 3.6% damage against great ones. While here it's pretty much the same thing. However, I've got 6.4% element and 1.2% great ones, right? And as a reminder, we're only gonna assume for the damage against great ones, right? So here, to calculate the damage for the first mod, oops, I accidentally got out of here. Right, so it's 20%, 3.2, and 3.6. So now we have to be careful in the calculation. It's 1.2 times 1.03 times 1.04, because the game actually doesn't count for the decimals and just rounds the number, right, to the closest. So let's do this real quick. 1.2 times 1.03 times 1.04, in which I end up with 1.285. So now let's take a look at the other one. So the other one shows me 20% status damage, 6.4, and 1.2. So what do I have to do here? I have to do 1.2 times 1.06 times 1.01. I end up with 1.28472, which means that this mod is actually gonna do better, even if you multiply the 3.2 times 3.6 from this one and 6.4 times 1.2 from this one, right? So this one, after multiplying the percentage respectively, this one has better damage output. However, even if with the higher percentage, this one's going to do better. Now, of course, it's never going to be as easy as that, since you also have to consider the damage against elite enemies and some other factors, right? Ideally, you're not just calculating mod by mod, because since you're not taking into account the decimals, right? While in the end, in your gear stats, the decimals, well, they're gonna add up with each mod, right? So ideally, you collect everything, right? And you equip it on yourself with every gear, whatever. And then you calculate it from all of the battle stat sheet over here, right? Of course, you must not forget all of the hidden buffs. So for instance, the mod I showed earlier that gave 30%, that was not written in there. You'd also have to take into account the 15% from the corrosion shotgun, for instance, if you're using that. But this is pretty much what allows you to do, knowing all this knowledge. Since instead of, like, if you want to see if a set of mods would be better than another set of mods against, like, say, bosses or elites, well, that's pretty hard to do so, because you'd have to either fire up a silo or the monolith or whatever, right? Because you can't test it on a Dermin currently, and you know, if you want to test it on boss or elite, you gotta fire up the monolith, do the run again, do the run again, do the run again, because some weapons are really, as I've said, some weapons are really RNG. So that would be hard to test, right? So literally you could just do it mathematically like this, and it would do the job easily. I also want to talk about some special substats, and I have one in mind here, which would be the trigger chance. Now, this example is on Fast Gunner, but it's the same thing for shock trigger chance if you ever see it. So pretty much for the blue tier, we have 3.6%. Now, the thing with this is that it's not additive to the perchance of your gun. It's multiplicative, which makes it worse. So let's take a look at the Power Surge shotgun. It says in the first line that it has 70% chance to trigger Power Surge on hit. Now here we have, it's in a weapon mod. Now here we have 3.6%, but pretty much it would be 0.7 times 1.04. You have to round the percentage to the closest number if it's the only trigger chance bonus that you have, right? And then it gives me 0.728, which is rounded to 0.73% chance. So you get 3% chance instead of what it tells you, which is, well, 3.6. Well, 4 technically, if it's the only thing you have. So yeah, if you've learned something new or enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated. And if you want to learn more, or if you got questions, you know, suggestions, video suggestions, whatever, please feel free to leave it in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer them. See ya and take care.